What horrifying memory would you erase from your mind if you could? October 13th, 2017. Let me correct myself. Friday, October 13th, 2017. I was 12 years old. It was the end of a normal 7th grade school day, and that day happened to end with band. I was a band and choir student at the time, and every other day our last period would flip between band and choir. I was always much more fond of choir, so I only put minimum effort into band just so I could get it over with. The end of the period was nearing, and we all starting packing our instruments up and putting away our music. Band was taught by a married couple, Mr. and Mrs. F. Mr. F was at the podium that afternoon, and before he dismissed us to pack up, he announced to me, and the entire class, that my dad would be picking me up that day. I found it quite odd. I always took the bus home to my mum's first to drop my things off since my parents were divorced. After some oohing and chuckles were made, I packed up and made my way out to meet my dad. The drive home was really quiet. My dad and I are both quite fond of music, but even now I don't remember anything playing at all. I can picture the road and the sky, but no sound at all. We made irrelevant small talk. When we arrived home, my dad asked for me to sit with him in the living room. This was very odd, not to mention him picking me up to begin with. He delicately proceeded to tell me that my mom had taken her own life early that morning. The moment that I would erase from my memory would be the collapse I had into his arms, the repetition of no that I uttered in knee-jerk reaction, the guilt I had, knowing that her dropping clothes off the previous night would be the last time she would, the feeling that if I had remembered my phone charger, and not let my phone die, if I could have stopped her somehow with a text message, even if it was unbeknownst to me what she intended doing later on. The hours after were some of the toughest hours I've ever experienced. My family awaited me at my grandfather's house, all in some stage of shambles themselves. Going through the house, seeing the Coors Light cans strewn upon the table, 10, 15, all about the kitchen. I remember that, for a while, I treated it almost like I was a detective, cracking a case in a silly game instead of what it really was, a broken bar. No 12-year-old deserves to have these types of thoughts plague them in the blink of an eye. Alcoholism is a ferocious beast, and if somebody that you know is going through it, I urge you to try to get them the help they need. You very well could save a life, and the necessity for a young adult to reflect on the memories of his 12-year-old self. When I was 14, I was on a Boy Scout camp with my friends. We decided to hike up a mountain that was close by. The trail had switchbacks, and there were other hikers above us that morning. Suddenly we heard the roaring of a rock slide above us, and in an instant, a large boulder struck my friend Johnny in the head. He was just ahead of me. Another struck my friend Brad, who was just behind me. Somehow I was spared. I watched in horror as the boulder carried Johnny down the switchback to the next level below us. I ran down to find him, and when I got there he was face down. When I rolled him over, I saw that his head was crushed in and he was dead. Brad was screaming that his shoulder hurt. I was in shock trying to process what I was seeing. Brad had dislocated his shoulder but was alive. My other friend Rick was sitting on the trail screaming and in shock. This was before the age of cell phones. I had to literally run down to the trailhead and hitch a ride back to where we were camping. There was a ranger station. They helped Brad, and we carried Johnny's body off the mountain. We later learned that there were some people above us who had been kicking rocks down the mountain. Not sure if they ever knew the price of their stupidity. I am 62 now and I still see Johnny's crushed head. It's something I wish I could forget. A few years ago, some friends and I went on a hike in some mountains not far away from where I live. As we were on our way to the top, we stopped by a refuge to have some food. As we were eating, we heard screaming and turned our heads to the slope of the mountain close by. A couple hundred meters of line of sight away from us, two hikers had slipped from a very steep trail across the valley and had started rolling down the rocky mountain. They kept rolling and screaming until at some point they lost consciousness, and we heard a very loud crack as they crashed on the rocks below. They probably fell for around 600 meters of vertical altitude or so. Broken bar. We called the hospital and an helicopter arrived. But of course the two were dead. We later saw on the news that they were a married couple who had ventured onto a track that was way too dangerous with poor experience. and they had tied themselves together as they were climbing with a rope. I can't imagine how horrible it must have been for them to realize one of them had slipped and then shortly follow them to their doom. I wouldn't mind forgetting about what I saw, as it was very horrifying and the first time I saw someone die in front of me. My partner, who I met in kindergarten, and my 11-year-old daughter dying by being scraped along a rock cut on a highway as if run along a cheese grater, all because a trucker didn't want to stay on his side of the yellow line on some S-curves. While I wasn't in the vehicle, I got to see the results firsthand as I was driven to the morgue to identify them. Well, half of them. It is kind of hard to miss a giant rust-colored smear and bits of flesh sticking to the rock edges, alongside shards of plastic, metal, and glass. You sit there in the escort vehicle hoping that has nothing to do with you, and then the realization as you walk in to see what happened to their bodies. The anger a broken bar can only be described poorly as amazing. I, to this day, can't even consider having another relationship. Hundreds of horrific memories that haunt me. Things I saw and heard and got put through. But, let's start at the first time I had a world-altering experience. I was 5, it was the fall, and I was walking to school with a kid and his mother that morning. It was warm and sunny. We just kept chatting about whatever idiocy 5-year-olds discussed. Tires squeal, a woman's hysterically screaming as the kid's mother ran towards her. My friend is turned away crying, I'm not sure what to do or feel. There's someone laying in the road. It's a girl who was in 5th grade. She was riding her new bicycle she'd gotten for her birthday across the crosswalk, and an inattentive driver in a blue boxy pickup with an open grey trailer had run her over. I am told I was looking right at her the moment of her death, and well as when she got hit. Can't say I remember that exact moment, but I remember that eternity until the kid's mother returned and hurried us along. Maybe I'm naturally tough, or maybe I just was traumatized and never realized it. The school head counselors sent to speak to the class and me and the other boy separately. I don't remember being that upset by it, but it did start me down some issues. The creepiest thing? The exact spot on the road where she died has a crack in it as the road is pushing up as if she's under there. I'm 30 and that spot always creeps me out. I don't even like driving over it because it gives me a sense of dark guilt. I was 7 years old riding my bike home from the park. I was on a hill about 50 yards from my house when I heard a loud bang. There was a highway across the train tracks from my house that was a full view from the hill where I was. 2 cars had hit head on. I remember one of the cars was a station wagon. The accident happened right in front of me about 30 yards ahead of my house. It was a very small town, so it wasn't a really busy highway. I rode my bike close since nobody was around to see the accident. There was a baby screaming in the station wagon. The mother was slumped over the steering wheel unconscious. I ran home to tell my parents, so they could call police. By the time they came out, other people had came up on the scene, too. They couldn't help the 8-month baby, and you could hear her screaming for almost 2 hours before the medics got her out. A broken bar, and the young mother, who was 24, was indeed dead on the scene near broken bar, so they left her there in the driver's seat while trying to get the baby out of the back. This was in 1985. My older brother was 9 years old and went outside with me to watch with everyone else. Broken bar, and Dad got mad at us, spanked us both, because it upset him. He didn't want us out there watching since it was discovered that the mom was dead. I'll never forget hearing that baby screaming non-stop at the top of her lungs. Poor little baby. That a very sad day. Word spread fast around there. My first thought as an answer was the day when I was 10 years old and found my uncle's body in a shed after he committed suicide, gun in the mouth. But, though it was related, it came out 25 years later. Over the years the family never spoke of my uncle, or suicide at all. I finally said something about it when I was 35 with 2 young children. My mother nonchalantly said my uncle was in a really bad place when he killed himself. I understood that. Then she went on to say he had threatened suicide for at least 3 years prior, and his threats had escalated in recent months. Not only had he threatened suicide, he had said he planned to take out the entire family with him when he did, and they were always watching their backs with him. She didn't realize my childhood slipped out from underneath me that day. You see, The reason I was at my aunt and uncle's house that day was because they were babysitting me as my parents went shopping. I felt so betrayed knowing she willingly put me in danger. I realized the distance and insecurity I had always felt in childhood wasn't my imagination. Watching my first and only newborn son laying in a hospital crib bed next to me, staring into my eyes, screaming and having seizures repeatedly for several hours before a doctor finally listened to me and agreed that he was having them. He became diagnosed with bacterial meningitis from me. Khalid, only 8 days old, and was transferred to 2 different hospitals for care. Those first 24 hours will forever be in my mind. Watching my beautiful baby boy laying the suffering killed me in ways I never imagined. He was hospitalized for almost 2 months and has improved so much since that first day. I am forever grateful that he is still here and being his happy and healthy self. He still has a lot of follow-up appointments and some physical therapy, but he's such a happy baby now. He's officially 2 months old and has since recovered from a collapsed lung at birth as well as bacterial meningitis. No words can describe how thankful I truly am to have such a strong boy. I would never wish this on anyone. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to give this video a thumbs up and share this video around if you enjoyed it. And if you want to see more content like this, click the subscribe button and the bell icon next to it. See you next time.